Well, let's go ahead and dive in. We titled this the 100 Reasons to Put Off the Brand Project You Know You Need. And maybe that's a little tongue in cheek. We're going to get into not only some of the reasons to put off that project, but to also think about some of the reasons to go ahead and move forward with it, some of the ways to get past some of those hurdles. And we're really excited to talk through the branding process with all of you. So, you made it here. You know maybe a little bit about us, but I'll go ahead and get us started. And I say that I'm delighted to be presenting with my business partner, longtime colleague, mentor, and friend, Jennie Winton. Jennie and I have been working together for over 20 years. We started this company 20 years ago together. I look at her as both a brand expert and someone who can speak really authoritatively about the brand strategy process, but she's also an excellent leadership coach. And as a leadership coach, she helps nonprofit executives to be happier at work and more effective at work, and is incredibly successful in doing so. So I'm really happy to be co-presenting with you today, Jennie.
Thank you, Zach. Well, I'm happy to introduce you. So Zach is my mission-minded co-founder, as he said, and he also acts as our creative director and oversees all of the great work that you see. So when you look at our website, when you see the success that our clients have, it's because of Zach and all of the brilliance that he brings to the work that we do. Kind of think of him as chief of fun around here as well, because he can make anything fun and light as we partner with our clients to help them elevate and do better work toward their mission. So anyway, he is also an expert in brand. Don't say it's all me. And we have a lot to share with you today. We're really excited to bring this together. Zach and I don't get to present together that often. So I feel like this is kind of a treat for us, and we hope it'll be a treat for you too. We're looking forward to it.
Well, I'm happy to accept the title Chief of Fun, but I'm not going to accept that all that great work is because of me. We have an excellent team at Mission Minded, surrounded by a lot of great talent. And so we're really lucky to have so many great colleagues in the strategy side of things, as well as on the creative side of things. And, Mission Minded is a strategy and creative firm that helps good causes have greater impact. So we believe that the organizations that make our world better need to be unapologetically bold. So every day we ask, what if? We unlock new ways to fire up your supporters, because when your community is united by magnetic ideas, they'll stop at nothing to help you achieve extraordinary results. And that energy is what keeps us coming to work every day. We're excited to help our clients think about how they can break the mold, how we can break the mold, how we can come up with new and exciting ways to push your mission forward. So there's three things that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start a little bit by just talking about the state of nonprofit branding. What's going on? What are some of the trends that we're seeing? What are some of the concerns that you might have as you're thinking about sort of those reasons to postpone that branding project, but also what are some reasons to push forward in it? We want to make sure that we're all working from the same definition, and we'll talk about what brand is and why it matters to your organization. And then we will talk through 5 steps to a new brand that can elevate your mission. So we'll talk through some of the key, most important steps you need to take inside your organization to help move things forward. So I guess the first question we want to help you ask, though, is why delay your brand project? And even put that as a question, all of you. Jennie?
Yeah, so we have a poll that you should all be seeing right now. There's 3 questions if you scroll down, and we want you to just look at these questions and just give an honest answer. No, it's anonymous. What's your biggest hurdle to starting a brand project? It might be concern about how long it's going to take. You're already busy, you have a full-time job, how are you going to fit it in? It might be the cost. It might be because your colleagues aren't in support of it, even though you know that you need it. The second question is about the state of your brand, which is probably just an intuitive guess, but what is it? How strong do you think it is right now? We'd love to see that. This will be really interesting. And then the last question is, how concerned are you that your brand is holding you back? For many savvy nonprofit leaders, they know how important brand is, and when they can see that the brand isn't strong, they have a sinking feeling every day that fundraising and volunteer recruitment and program and collaboration and everything would be easier and better with a stronger brand. And it's okay if you're not. That might mean you have a strong one. So we're just curious to see folks on this call. Looks like on that first question, the biggest hurdle is cost. Well, that's good because today is about telling you what the steps are that you can take without a consultant. You do not have to hire a mission minded in order to be able to take some steps to strengthen your brand. So we're happy to say we can help address that. Concern about the time commitment, that's real. What we say about that, though, is that if you put the concerted effort in for a short period of time, the results serve your organization for 5 to 10 years before you have to look again at the brand and figure out how to refine it for that future moment. So it really is time we're spending now simply because it makes everything at your organization easier. When you have a succinct and powerful brand that everyone's behind, decision-making and impact is higher. Lack of board and colleague support. Hey, this webinar is being recorded, so you can share it with people. We also have some great blogs and white papers or free guides on our website that talk about the importance of branding that you can access to share with colleagues to get them to start thinking like you're thinking. Second question, the state of your brand looks like good, but we want it to be better and acceptable. It needs work is the majority of you. I'm sorry for the 8% of you that say it's poor and it's holding you back. Most nonprofits are, anywhere in there. So you're not alone. We can all do better no matter how strong the brand is, mission-minded included. We'll mention this later, but we're going through our own rebrand right now. So we know what you're going through. Last question here. How concerned are you that your brand is holding you back? Okay, no one is very concerned. That's great. Somewhat concerned is the most common here, and then not concerned at all, 17%. That's great. Curious what you'll learn from today about how to strengthen your brand. So if it's already good, it'll get even better. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's see. She says share results. You're going to, okay. I'm going to close out of that. Great. All right. Zach, you want to move us along?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can. There we go.
Okay, great. Give me 1 second here. Awesome. So we wanted to talk about what's going on with brand today. It's really interesting. Zach mentioned that we've been working together at Mission Minded for actually over 20 years. And when we first founded this company, nobody in the nonprofit sector was talking about brand. And when I say nobody, maybe that's not true. Maybe there were a 0.5% of nonprofits out there who were starting to wonder what it was about. But it really was not part of how nonprofits were oriented to understand how to get stronger, better, reach their goals more efficiently. But now the great news is a strong brand is recognized as a requirement for your organization. And getting it right is a big undertaking. So how to get it right is really the question for today's nonprofits. So it used to be, convincing nonprofits that even had to think about this, which some of you said your colleagues are still, kind of in that camp. But for the most part, brand is understood in the sector, at least as being somewhat important. But we're at the next generation of what branding means for nonprofit organizations. And so, what you did in branding in the last 20 years for a nonprofit is actually not even enough compared to what you have to do today. And we're going to be talking more about that. Here's a quote from the head of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, a division there. He says it's so vitally important for nonprofits to earn and sustain the trust of the public and generous donors who support their missions. By the way, St. Jude's is ranked the top trusted nonprofit brand the 2nd year in a row. That's really impressive. For any of you who are sitting there thinking, well, that's all great for them because they've built this big national reputation, but we're a small organization. We only work in one region. We'll never be that well respected. That isn't true. You can have a very strong, and you must have a very strong brand, no matter what the size of your organization is. And we'll be talking about why and how that benefits you. Here's why it, as we say, it matters more today than it ever has. And one of the reasons is people have shorter attention spans. It's a noisy digital world out there. People don't think as hard. They don't evaluate as much. And they're expected to just, they want to get quick hits of ideas that help them make quick decisions. And that means you can't have a meandering or unclear brand, or you're just not going to get through. And it doesn't matter how great your mission is. Your brand itself has to speak volumes really clearly. We think that the very word or the idea of brand has been a little bit corrupted as well. if you think about individuals, influencers, people like that, talking a lot about personal brand, that's something that has kind of degraded the conversation a little bit, but also made everyone start to think about brand and look at brand. And so there's not even a clear sort of metric for what that means, and where it really is a dignified and noble effort for your organization. It can be misconstrued by people.
Jenny, if I can add to that,
Yeah.
I think in the for-profit world, for some people, the idea of brand has become almost a lie, a veneer, something that you're putting over to make your product seem better than it is. But when we're in the nonprofit sector, brand really is about finding your most essential truth. And what is the thing that is at your core that's most important for people to know about you? And so, because it's that noisy world, because there are so many different organizations and individuals thinking about their brand, they've corrupted this idea. But when you say that it's pure, Jenny, I think you're absolutely right. For our clients, for the work that we're all doing, it really is, what is that pure distillation of what's most important about you?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Zach. Related to that is around authenticity and just really being as true and honest as you can. People see through nonsense and falsities. You can't make claims as an organization and not live up to them and have people like you. And especially millennials and Gen Z. I mean, they just don't tolerate, and they will hold you accountable if you're inauthentic. So having a brand that really puts forward what you truly value and what you live every day is the way to become a magnet for people who value what you value. And the other big challenge, and this is so interesting to us because it really wasn't the case for a long time, but more and more, your competitors are big corporations and for-profit organizations. And that is because so many of them are talking now about causes, and they're trying to link their brand and their product to issues that they think their customers care about. And so that can lead people to feel like, well, by buying this item, I'm actually supporting a good cause. I don't necessarily have to get proactive with nonprofits who are actually doing mission-driven work. And so that makes your competition even harder. I was going to give you a couple of examples of this. Ben and Jerry's for Democracy is a program that they have going. That's in brand alignment for them. And so I could convince myself that when I buy my next pint of Chunky Monkey, that I am really helping with the democratic ideals. And then I don't have to donate to the local boots on the ground, get elected kind of efforts. Another one is Pine Sol and Essence Magazine, promoting Black women creating their legacy. So Pine Sol is a cleaning product, and they're targeting their target audience and encouraging them in ways to build their legacy. Again, you might be involved with that and feel like, great, I've done my part by buying this product. I don't need to do more for or with Black women, or if I am a Black woman, I've done enough. The last one, Starbucks promotes transgender inclusivity. Awesome. They have a huge campaign about it. If that's something that's important to you, you are going to maybe feel like you've done your part by going to Starbucks. And again, good for those corporations, but it's made the nonprofit's job harder. So we have to really think about how to strengthen the nonprofit brand so that we can cut through that clutter and stand for something that every generation is going to get excited about. Last one is, and this we're going to talk more about, Zach mentioned boldness. In this economic time of instability, we are seeing people, organizations retreating from being bold, from taking bold positions because they're afraid of offending donors, or they're afraid that they have people on their board who hold a strong position. And in the past, they would have debated it and solved it as an organization, but instead they're just kind of retreating. And retreating means that you water down your brand. You have to be showing people what you stand for, why it matters, how you're all aligned at your organization in order to have a strong brand. And so we're all cautious in this crazy world right now. And yet your nonprofit's brand needs to be bolder and more forward thinking than ever, again, to cut through it and be meaningful to people. All right, we go to the next one. So this rebranding is expensive. You all voted on that. You know it's true. Whether you hire a firm or not, there are expenses associated with it because of the time and all of the changes you'll make to create the strong brand. But as this quote says, it costs much more over time not to invest in putting your best face forward. And that right there is the one reason to make sure you can share that with all of your skeptical colleagues. There's a cost to not doing it. So you got to be bold in this world where we are right now. You can't be shy. You can't be unclear. You can't be opaque. You can't be leaning on what used to work, because it's not going to work anymore. It's time for you to create a bold brand that stands out and starts by igniting your internal stakeholders so that externally, everyone who acts with you can feel the excitement.
So one of the things we want to do is we want to make sure that we're all working with the same definition. If we're going to be talking about brand here, and brand can mean a lot of different things to different people. So for some folks, when they think about brand, they think about logo, or when they think about brand, they think about name. But when we're thinking about brand here, we really want you to think about it as a synonym for the word reputation. That every organization has a reputation, whether it's been intentional about that reputation or not. But we want you to take the steps to be intentional, to really think deeply about what do you want to be known for? What kind of organization do you want to be seen as? And that's some of the work that we're going to be doing here today. I think it can be helpful if we pick an organization as an example. I'm going to choose the Red Cross. Jenny and I, actually, that's where we first met. I got my start in the nonprofit sector working at the American Red Cross. And what I want to ask of all of you is, when you think about the Red Cross, what are some of the qualities that come to mind? And use the chat field, please, to go ahead and just write in. What are some of the thoughts that come to mind when you're thinking about the Red Cross? What are the qualities that come forward when you think about the Red Cross? And I will acknowledge there are probably a couple of folks who are going to say, well, I've got some negative thoughts about the Red Cross as well. There are certainly challenges that the organization has either brought upon itself or faced over the last couple of decades, and yet it has a strong reputation. So there we go. I'm seeing a few people start to add to the chat. I'm seeing big, always on, first to respond, reliable, large, responsive, emergency needs, on the front lines of global turmoil. And there's a real theme in the responses that I'm seeing here. Basically, big, corporate, trustworthy, and always there, reliable, first to show up. And that reputation, it didn't happen because just once the Red Cross was the first one on the scene. That reputation has been built because again and again, through consistent actions, through consistent statements, through consistent messages, the Red Cross has built that reputation over time. And by the way, Marty, I do see some of the negative side as well. And that's part of brand. And we'll talk about that we have positive things that happen in our histories as organizations, negative things, and how can brand help us with that? So given that brand is sort of the sum total of thoughts that come to mind when we think about an organization, we start to think about, well, what can we do to frame that? And another way of thinking about brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. I don't want to think about what people say about Jeff Bezos when he's not in the room. And yet brand can be shortcut language, this quick way of thinking about a product or a person or a nonprofit organization. And that's really what we're honing in on. How do we think about that shortcut language, that thing that's said about us when we're not in the room, in order to build the strongest possible reputation and the most accurate possible reputation about our organization? When we've done this, a strong brand can do a whole lot for our organization. So one of the things that a strong brand can do is it helps us create relationships with our most important audiences. And what we mean by that is that when people think about our organization, they don't just see it as the individuals they know. They feel that they have a connection with something bigger, with something larger. And if you think about an organization that you support and imagine them calling you on the phone, and you see that on your caller ID, you have a certain set of expectations and a certain kind of relationship that comes to mind because you know what that organization stands for and who they are. That's the power of brand coming through right there.
I'm curious how many people got phone calls on Giving Tuesday. Surprisingly, I did receive a few, even though so much happens now online. I think that's interesting. And that I did have that experience. Oh, who's calling? What's the first thing I think about this nonprofit? Put it in the chat if you got a phone call during Tuesday.
Another thing that a strong brand can do for us is it will help minimize competitive threats. right? So there are a lot of organizations out there who are in sort of similar work to each of ours. And when our brand is strong, when we stand for a particular idea, we can stand out from that crowd. We can be known for a very specific set of qualities that helps donors, helps volunteers, helps others join us in the work that we're doing. Another thing that a strong brand can do is it can help defend against the negative news that might be out there. So Marty noted that the Red Cross had faced some articles over the years about questions about it potentially misusing its funds. And even when that kind of negative press comes out, the Red Cross remains the #1 charity that Americans turn to in times of crisis in order to show their empathy and their concern and their desire to do something. And that's the strength of the brand coming through right there, that even though there may be some negative news that comes out, basically our brains hate cognitive dissonance. We hate it when there's information that comes in and starts to compete with what we think we already know. And so brand becomes this bulwark, this way of grounding in a specific idea. And so it helps to strengthen our organizations against that negative news when it happens. Another thing that brand can be really helpful with is that it makes people proud to align with either our school, our nonprofit, our university, whatever institution we are. People are more likely to want to stand with us when we have a strong brand. So think about it for a second. Many of you probably have either a bumper sticker on your car or a tote bag that you're proud to take to the grocery store, or a hat that you wear on a regular basis, and it reinforces the brand of an organization that you're proud to be a part of. And why do we do that? It's because that organization has values and ideals that are really clear, and we feel really confident and comfortable standing side by side with it. We want people to think the same positive thing that you think about, I don't know, National Public Radio and NPR. I want you to think about me as well. I'm the kind of person who also carries those ideals of caring about quality information. A strong brand also makes it easier for our stakeholders to say yes to us. Essentially, we've created that shortcut. We've said, here's this simple way of understanding our organization. And therefore, when we come to you and we say, we want you to give, we want you to be a part of this, we want you to join us for this event, it's a lot easier to say yes if you have that clear idea in mind about what that organization is and what it does. And lastly, a strong brand is built on benefits instead of features. And this is a way of saying, like, it doesn't matter how many programs you run every week or how many different sites that you have around the county. What's really important is what's the benefit of what you're doing. Strong brands are built on benefits instead of features. And so a really simple way of thinking about this is if Jenny and I came to you and we said, we want you to purchase a 6-foot-long nylon cord that's double reinforced on both ends and has a nickel-plated hook. And no one here is buying it. I just gave you a bunch of features. But if instead we say, we want you to purchase this dog leash because with it, you're going to have control of your dog in public and your dog can't run away or get in a fight with another dog, you're much more likely to buy the dog leash because of the benefits that it provides. And the same thing's true as you're talking about your nonprofit organization. That as you come forward and you talk about the benefit of the work that you're doing in the community, people are more likely to want to align with you.
Hey, Zach, go back to that last slide real quick. For
Sure.
Tomorrow, everyone, you will be getting an email from us with some resources and follow-up materials to help you on this brand journey. Look out for those. If you want to just take a snapshot of this screen right here, these are the reasons that you can use to convince your colleagues that this ought to be a priority, both for time and budget, or however you decide to fund it or get it going. These are the talking points that you can use to have conversations inside your organization. Great.
Thanks, Jenny.
All right, so you want a new brand. You're ready to stop putting it off. You've used up all 100 reasons. There are no more reasons you want to create a new brand. So here are the 5 steps that you can go through. And as I said, you do not have to hire a consultant to do this. These are the 5 best practice steps that we use when we work with all of our clients, and you can do this too. So the first one is to assess the brand that you have now. They're all loading. Okay. So we're going to go through all of these real quick, and then we'll go through each slide. So assess the brand you have now, identify your mission fit audiences, examine the competition, find the open opportunity, which means how are you different, what's not being filled, and then you need to begin to send the signals that reinforce this new positioning, this new brand for your organization. So let us break each one of these down for you. Assessing the brand you have now, it is really interesting. A mistake that is often made is guessing instead of doing the research. And clients come to us all the time by saying, well, we think this, we think that, we're not really sure, we don't know. Well, you can't know unless you put a concerted effort behind it. And again, we are sincere in the fact that you don't have to hire a consultant to do this, but you do have to use some best practice and rigor around how you assess the reputation that you have right now. And there are a lot of ways that you can do that cost effectively by creating surveys. There are of course, you know, there's survey tools that are out there like SurveyMonkey, but those don't help you do a great survey. So you have to do a little bit of reading to understand what the best practices are so that you know that you're asking questions that are actually going to give you new insights. Don't ever do research just to confirm hunches that you have. Base the hunches on the research you do so that you can find new ahas that help you understand how people are perceiving you. And ideally, you want to talk to people in a range of relationships with your organization. So people who've known you a long time, people who just had their first interaction with you. Ideally, if you can, people who don't know you at all, but you're interested in. You want to talk, of course, to donors at different levels, volunteers, and don't forget your internal audiences, your staff and volunteers who also have an assessment of what your reputation is now. So you really want to take the time to do that. Here's what you want to know. What reputation do you have now? Not among everyone. This isn't about the whole world. You're not trying to convince everyone to love your organization because sadly they won't. You really want to think about the people who are most important to your success or without whom you cannot succeed. That's who matters most to your brand. So how do they perceive you? And how would they answer this question? We're the organization that, it might just be shortcut language. That is how people think and talk to each other. Oh, look at what we saw on the Red Cross, just short phrases that you all use. Yeah, maybe a little money problem, big corporate, So what are those words that people would use to super succinctly tell a friend who you are? And another question you want to ask is, what do people get from your organization that they can't get from similar organizations? And we'll talk more about how you weave that into creating a brand. But again, we're on the first step now, and the first step is about exactly how you're perceived. So take a minute right now and just jot down what you think the brand is that you have at this moment. You can put it in the chat if you'd like to. You don't have to. You can just do this for yourself. But it's good to start with your hunches. Hunches matter, but you can't stop there. You want to build on those with insights.
I want to just add, while you're writing that down, I'm going to add to something that Jennie was just saying. And she said, everyone should care about your organization, but they don't. And as an example, I know that Jennie, you've been a passionate supporter of animal organizations over the years. And I've been a really strong supporter of arts organizations in my community. And when I think about animal organization, it's not that I don't care about animals or don't think that those are really important organizations, but I'm prioritizing my own giving just as you're prioritizing yours. And so it wouldn't make sense for those animal organizations to really try to convert me as a donor if by doing a little bit more work, they can just find other folks that share similar perspectives to you. And so that's what we're talking about. You want to think about how does your brand resonate with those audiences who are close in and are likely to respond.
Great. Okay. I hope you jotted down for yourself. Here's an example from one of our clients, California Change Lawyers, who we were privileged to partner with in creating a new brand for them. By the way, a new name as well, but brand and name are not synonymous, but that is part of the work that we did. We're really, we're proud, we're tickled about this name, California Change Lawyers. It's a pretty great one. Anyway, the reputation that they identified that they had was being flexible, responsive, and doing advocacy. And that's sort of where they wanted to head. In reality, when we first started, they had a reputation for giving money away. There was a perception that lawyers we're giving money away to help other lawyers get to law school. And that's very features driven. It's not very inspirational. It's programmatic. So they wanted to move in the direction more of flexible, responsive, and advocacy. So the way they filled this out is that they're the organization that fights for diversity in the law profession. So they're really about getting people of color and all kinds of diverse kinds of people in California to become lawyers. And in particular, they try to get people to become prosecutors too, when that's appropriate.
Jenny, I feel like it's worth mentioning that this organization was initially known as the California Bar Foundation.
Yes.
And so the reason it had that reputation was that this was, the California Bar giving money to other people who were joining the bar. And this was the opportunity.
Yeah, so we're talking a lot about research here. You could ask a couple of dozen people what their perceptions are of your organization and how they would describe you, and just really listen. These can be one-on-one conversations. If you can get someone, that's like a little bit outside your organization to have these conversations, the people being interviewed might be a little more honest and direct with them than they will if you're, on staff, but you can do it a lot of ways. Here's what you will find. Your stakeholders are likely not all to be aligned. So you're going to hear a lot of different things. Unless your brand is rock solid, like Volvo, safety. If you interview anyone about Volvo, what does it stand for? Everyone's going to say safety. Unless you're that solid, you're probably going to hear different perspectives and different opinions and people understanding you for a piece of your work over here, but not for this impact over here. So don't let that intimidate you. That's where branding starts. You got to know how you're perceived or misperceived in this moment, so you know where to take your brand in the future. All right.
Well, let's move on to that next step. And that next step is to get really clear about who are the mission fit audiences, who are those who are most likely to align with your organization. And one of the biggest mistakes that we see often is that folks want to think about their audiences in terms of their demographics. What are the jobs that they're holding, or where do they live? What is their income level? And while those are important pieces of information, you're in a much stronger position when you're thinking about your audiences through the lens of their values. What do they care about? What do they hold dear? And how do those values align with your organization? And so the more you can understand what you as an organization value and what you care about, and then think about those who share those values, the better position you're in to start to find the right audiences. So some of the ways to do this are to really unpack and articulate the values that your organization and your audiences share. And one of our best practices at Mission Minded is, rather than think about those values as single words, the idea of integrity, what we really want instead is to use actionable values, calls to action that say, carry forward with integrity, or act honorably. That would be a better way of expressing that value in a way that everyone inside your organization or aligned with your organization can really understand what it is you value and be able to act on it in a meaningful way. We encourage you to develop an imaginary person who deeply cares about each value. Get to know them, think about them, have that conversation with them. Either you can act it out, or you can have it in your mind, but really see these as humans, and go through an empathy exercise of thinking about, where is this person coming from, and what do they need to know about the organization? Why do they care about us? And then center their needs and not yours in your communication. So when you reach out to them, it's not about what is going on for the organization and what do you want them to know. It's what do they want? What do they want to know? And why are they engaging with you? So really put yourself in the shoes of your audiences. Frida, I know that you have a blog post that you will throw in the chat that I think is also relevant here, that starts to think about how this might apply to the way you think about your donor types as well, and a way to cast away the traditional donor pyramid and instead think about your donors through a value-based pyramid instead. So Jennie brought up California change lawyers. We're coming back to them. And as we think about their audiences, they had at least 5 different audiences who were engaging with them for different reasons. So whether it was Type A Tiff, who was an alumna herself and was thinking about carrying this forward, wanting others to participate in the same program as her, or Cliff Cash, who is a high net worth attorney who is looking to pay it forward and create new opportunities for others, full of ideas. Isa, who the diversity chair at a law firm, who was eager to participate and engage with California change lawyers because it was advancing a mission that she was working diligently on within her own organization, or Lynn Legacy, a board alum who felt pride in the work that she had been doing and wanted others to feel that same sense of pride, or Karen Casey, a social justice foundation vice president, who working alongside California change lawyers was advancing a similar mission. Each of these was coming from a shared value point of view. And so then we took it a step further and thought through, like, what does Tiff care about from change lawyers? What does she want? And what does change lawyers want from her? What does that look like? And how do we create an experience and a brand that really lifts this up and brings this persona to life? But all of this moves away from thinking about Tiff as a sort of a two-dimensional person that we're transacting with, and instead thinks about Tiff as somebody who's integral to the organization, that we have a deep relationship with, and that we're trying to meet her needs as much as she's meeting ours.
Great. I'd love everyone to just put in the chat what insight you're having right now about how you think about your own target audiences for your organization. Just throw your thoughts in there. And I'm going to carry us on to the third step in looking at your brand, which is to examine the competition. You would be shocked. We are routinely shocked when we start partnering with one of our clients to find that they don't really know what other organizations are saying, projecting to the same supporters that they're going for. They don't know what similar organizations' big messages are or big idea. They can't tell us the brand identity of the competing organizations. And it's really critically important that you take the time to do this so that you create a brand that is not only authentically you and powerfully aligned with the values of your audiences, but that's different and unique, because you don't want people putting your organization up to another one and saying, like, I can't tell the difference, doesn't really matter. You've got to carve out that place where you're different, and you can't do that by not knowing what your competition is saying. And competition is really a tricky thing because in this day and age, you probably have more competitors than you think you do. For example, one of our clients is Shotgun Players, a theater company in Berkeley, California. And, it's not just the other awesome theater companies in Berkeley, and there are quite a few. One of their competitors is Netflix, and another is staying home. People don't want to go out right now. So you've got to think really big about what competition really means for your organization in this moment in time, and build a brand that speaks to how you stand out and why you're worth it. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. So if you go to the next slide, Zach. Did I skip a mistake? Yeah. I talked about that. And if you can just go to the exam of the competition. So here's just an exercise that you can do. So building on, I hope you're continuing to take your own notes here. So which organizations are your biggest competitors? Like, what are you most similar to? Start there. You probably have other organizations that people would lump you in with quite naturally, sort of categorically. So start there. And then look at what is the big idea associated with each of them. You can look at their materials, or you might just know this is how they're perceived by people. By the way, if you're doing research, if you are going to go and talk to people about your reputation, you might consider at that same time asking people what ideas they ascribe to the other competitors that you've identified. It can be really interesting to hear how folks position you in their mind compared to your competitors. And so, as I said, the other competitors you might be missing are those that are not so obvious. So don't overlook those. So these were some of California Change Lawyers' competition. And one of them is actually another mission-minded client, One Justice. And so they looked carefully, and we worked together to say, like, how are these organizations all doing something within the legal system and justice and fairness and diversity, and what's happening here that California Change Lawyers can uniquely own. And that's a really important step. So we want to emphasize that you shouldn't be overlooking that.
Which takes us to step 4. So you've taken stock of where your organization is. you've done a little bit of research, you've asked yourself some important questions around your values and helped to create personas that align with those values. You've taken the step of really identifying who your competition is and where they sit. And this starts to get you to a place where you can distill your own brand positioning, to really think deeply about, okay, this is where we stand. Here's what makes us unique and what makes us special. One of the biggest mistakes we see is that so many folks, as they think about their brand positioning, is that they make it too complex. Your positioning is not your mission statement. Your mission statement is what you exist to do as an organization. That it's not a collection of all of your features and all of the different programs and all the different things that you do. A positioning statement has to be really simple. It gets right to the point. It's the idea that you're trying to own in the minds of your public. If we think, for example, about one of the best known brands in the world, if we think about Apple for a second, and I'm going to ask right now, right when you think about the Apple brand, what makes Apple Apple? How do you know, what are the qualities that Apple is known for? Just write that in the chat. And as you're writing it, I'm going to give you 10 seconds or less to do it. Put that in there. What are the qualities that come to mind when you think about Apple? I can predict that we will see ease of use, great design, and simplicity. And it's baked into every single thing that they do, how they look, how they sound, and into their products. And Apple does tons of different things, right? They do movies and television and hardware and software and music, and they're in all of these different industries. They don't try and say it all in their brand. Their brand is about those couple of key ideas: simplicity, ease of use, great design. And so when we think about the brand for your organization, we're trying to do the same thing. What's the simple idea that your reputation comes down to? So when we're doing brand work, we're thinking about what's the open opportunity. What's the thing that even if your audience, your competition might also lay claim to, what's the thing that you can say is uniquely yours, that you're gonna say, this is where we're putting our stake in. This is what makes our organization our organization. And that's what you're looking for when you're thinking about your positioning. It has to be authentic, has to be relevant to your audiences, has to be distinctive from your peers. So we are the X organization. What is the special thing that we can claim that no one else will claim? Or even if somebody else tries to, we can defend and say, yeah, but we do that best, biggest, strongest, more than anybody else. I noticed with Marty, you put that comment that you also think about their amazing packaging. And so just going back to that Apple example, packaging is one of the ways that they express that brand, where they bring it to life. It, of course, has great design and easy to use, and so is everything else. In fact, the elevator of their flagship store in New York City it's the most innovative elevator I've ever been in. It's sleek, it's got great design, and it has a glass ceiling, unlike any other elevator I've been in. So all of those things are, how do we reinforce what makes us special, what makes us unique? When we think about California Change Lawyers, the unique idea there was that they're the organization that's leading the movement toward a more equitable justice system in California. That's their role. That's what makes them unique. Some other clients we've worked with, like Evident Change, is the leader in improving social systems so they better serve the people they impact. You don't have to know Evident Change to appreciate the simplicity of this positioning statement. That it's, even though they have many programs and they might be working on a lot of different levels, there's a real simplicity to the idea that they're trying to be known for. And the same thing's true for Jewish Vocational Services, JVS, in San Francisco, that they've positioned themselves as the organization that's transforming the world of work so that individuals, employers, and communities can thrive. That's the one big idea that they're trying to bring through in their work.
I want to make sure everyone knows that these are not written or ever meant to be external statements. These are internal guides for you and your organization to say, what's our big thing that we're going to own so that we can stand out. So the way these are written, they're powerful, but they were not written as external messages. That is not their job. Their messages are much better, much more engaging, but this is their internal guide for, like, yes, this is the piece we're going to carve out that no other nonprofit can copy us on.
I'll add one other thing here, which is that positioning can be tough. And I want you to think for a second about a three-legged stool, and that one of the legs of that stool is your mission and vision. This is where we are going as an organization, what we exist to do. The second leg of that stool is your strategic plan. Here's how we're going to get there. These are the steps that we need to take in order to achieve that vision and mission. And the third leg is, and who are we? What makes us us as we're on that journey? Somebody else could take that journey, they might take it in a different way. What is uniquely about us as we're taking those steps? And that's the part of positioning that becomes really important.
Great. We have about 10 minutes left. At the end of this, we're going to show you a really inspiring video, and then we also have a special gift for you at the end. So let us get here to the fifth in the 5-step process, which is once you know what your positioning is, once you've done the research and understand your audiences and know how you're different and how you're going to carve yourself out, and you've decided, now is the time to start sending all the external signals so that people can start to perceive you in the way that you want to be perceived. And for some of your audiences, maybe they already see you that way. Great. But the point of this is to attract more and more people to you and to make it sort of an ironclad promise that you're putting out there about your organization. The mistake that a lot of nonprofits make is that they think about branding as just something that the marketing department is in charge of. So, well, they're going to go over there and maybe they're going to freshen up our logo, and maybe there's a name change. Maybe we have a new tagline. Oh, we might redo our website. But in reality, every single thing you do sends a signal about that will determine how people perceive you. So your brand exists only in the mind of your target audience. You can't control what people decide about you. You can only control the signals you send. And so once you've got this positioning and you know what the big idea is that you're trying to get out there, now you do an internal assessment and you say, how do we have to change how we look? So maybe there is a visual identity refresh and a website update. How do you have to change how you sound in having better, pithier, more current, exciting, bold messaging? How are you going to act? Are you going to show up in different ways than you have in the past in order to reinforce what you value? And then finally, what do you do? Does your new positioning call you to update any of your programming or operations in a way that can be more in alignment with your brand? This is really important. It's not enough to think about a couple of people at your organization working on the brand. It has to be everyone who works and volunteers there, understanding it and reinforcing these signals in every one of these ways, every single day, always, because you are constantly building and reinforcing your reputation at your nonprofit.
When we worked with the, if you don't mind, when we worked with the Children's Museum of Denver, one of the things they did is they thought about every single touch point of their brand from the moment you pull in their parking lot all the way through exiting the building. And so that meant parking spaces and signs next to parking spaces, the door itself, each became a signal of the brand and a way to experience what they were doing there.
Yeah, great. I'll say too, we do strategic planning at Mission Minded, and we're not talking about that today. But brand is not about changing what you do, whereas strategic planning might have you shifting what you do. Brand is about more effectively projecting why what you do matters. And so there's a little difference there I wanted to point out. So with California Change Lawyers, absolutely, with their new positioning changing from being, known as California Bar Foundation as, old white lawyers giving away money to younger people of color, that whole thing had to change. And so the new name California Change Lawyers was developed, and we created the tagline, Fund Justice, Change the World. Look at the value in there. Look at how the audience member is engaged. The donor is saying, you fund justice when you partner with us. And what does that do? It changes the world. So there's a lot in here. It's a visual identity and name change. It's a tagline change. And this is just one example of one of the important things that you change when you strengthen your brand. The other is your messaging. Your messaging has to pop. It's got to sound different than it's ever sounded before, because you have to catch people's attention. And as we said earlier, it's never been harder to do that. And so your old, long, meandering messages will no longer do. Using your mission statement as your lead message is not enough. We developed this format for a belief message for your organization that you can use. And we actually want you to take a minute now to play with this. By the way, we teach whole workshops on this. And so what we're going to ask you to do here in 3 or 4 minutes is, not enough time, but we just want you to kind of work the muscle and start to see how this works and how it could help your organization. So wait, if you go back one more time, I just want to explain the pieces to it. You want to use your organization's full name, and you want it, the first sentence is something that you believe, and it's a deeply held value that your organization has, that you know your target audiences have, and you want to express it in no uncertain terms. So come out strong with this first sentence. The second sentence is what you do, and you want to describe it not in the features way that Zach talked about earlier, but what are the efforts that you make every day, and what impact does that have to have? So you're starting to kind of suggest a problem here and show how your organization is tackling it. That could be one of the ways that you're differentiating yourselves from competitors. And then finally, you end strong by saying, here's who we're doing it for, and here's why. Here is why we do it. The big why of your organization is the thing that can help differentiate you and get people excited about supporting you, whatever support looks like for your organization. It might be enrollment, it might be buying tickets, it might be donating, volunteering, partnering, anything like that. They've got to know the why, because they want to be part of the why. That's what they care about. They don't care about your how, they care about the results, the problem and the results. So here's California Change Lawyers' belief message after we did this work. They believe that a state as diverse as California needs a justice system led by advocates of all ethnicities and races. Right off the bat, if I believe that too, I'm interested, I'm hooked, I'm in. And if I don't, if I could care less, they're never going to convince me anyway. So they start out strong, they're unequivocal. So every day we invest in bright, diverse scholars to ensure that they have the opportunity to become tomorrow's legal change makers. Notice this visual language, bright, diverse scholars. It's something you can start to see in your mind's eye, which makes this message more memorable, which is helpful when you're trying to persuade people to your cause. And they end with, because righting historical wrongs in our courtrooms, classrooms, and beyond will allow us to truly deliver the original American value, justice for all. So it's very powerful language that has served them really well. So we want you to just take a minute here, and I do mean a minute, and start to we go to the next slide, Zach, belief message. Oops. Or go back if you need to. Yeah. So this is the formula, and we make it seem easy, but it's not. You'll see. You got to really think about what you want to put in here. But we do want you to play with it and start to think about, if you don't know the answers to these right off the bat, your brand probably isn't strong enough. Because if you did have a truly unique, well-articulated brand, you'd know how to complete this right now. So take a screenshot of this. We also have more on the minute message model, which is what we call it, that you'll get in your email tomorrow. So you can look at more ways to make your messaging stronger. All right. Some of the visuals, Zach, if you want to move forward.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, this is just how their visual identity came to life across a lot of their materials. Very interactive.
So, Jenny, as people are writing these up right now, and we'd love it if you were able to create an example, please put it in the chat. We'd love to see it. Given time, I'm going to suggest that we skip the video and share that out in the email that we'll send out afterwards. Jenny and I will be spending, we'll hang on the line here for another 10 minutes or so. So if anyone wants to pose questions or just be in conversation with us, we'd love to answer those questions and continue this forward. And if you need to go because you've got your next meeting, we're delighted that you joined us for this hour. We really appreciate all the work that you're doing out in the sector to make our communities better. So thank you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for being here today.